back to Wicked Little Secrets Tarot. This week we're doing another spooky session, and I know we definitely don't look like our normal selves, but happy Halloween, everybody. Happy Samhain, happy Pagan New Year, happy end of October, everybody.
I'm sad to see it go.
Same.
It's my favorite month.
Oh, did you get that TikTok I sent you?
Mm-mm.
Talking about how, like, for us pagans, this is the end of the pagan year. So, bye 2020.
Very true. I'm still sad to see October go. It's my favorite month.
I know. This is going out with a bang, though. Yeah.
Let's hope it doesn't actually go out with a bang.
Right. So whatever everybody is doing tonight, we hope you are very, very safe. Make good choices. Well, make fun but safe choices, of course. And don't get sucked into that full blue moon.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. That's what I told my kids. I was like, no manifesting tomorrow.
I know. I said the thing to my mom, too, being like, I know you wanted to do your honey jar.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Wrong type of energy.
Real bad energy. The next day should be fine, but not tomorrow. Yeah. Well, Halloween. We're filming this like Friday night, so.
Well, I mean, technically.
Oh, it is. It's after
midnight.
It's after midnight. Happy Halloween.
Yeah, we got a late start.
Yeah, right. Nice. All right. So, like we said before, we are doing a spooky sesh. And we wanted to change it up just a little bit. Last time we talked about a lot of our personal ghost stories and experiences and things we had. But this week, it's not really a this week thing, is it?
No.
So
This
time, what we're doing is we're actually bringing you a scary story from Texas, actually. Not of the Chainsaw Massacre, but it is loosely based on a very iconic horror movie. We'll talk about that. This story starts in early 1980s in Texas. So this is a upper middle class type neighborhood. This is where they have like very well manicured lawns. It's very family friendly. Just like it's from the research I've done, it's a very wholesome place to live. And there was this couple. All right, so there's these homeowners, and they had saved up for years to try and just get like the perfect house, and they finally find it that checked all of the boxes, everything that they've always wanted in a home. And it was outside. It's this subdivision outside of Houston, Texas, and they move in, everything's fine for like the longest time. And then it didn't really say within the research how long they'd been living here when this happened. But they decided that they wanted to put a pool in their backyard, you know, because Texas, it's hot like most of the time, or so my husband says. And they just get this random knock at the door, and there's a stranger there, and he's just like, hey, I saw that you're going to be putting a pool in, but there's something you need to know. So he like takes Sam Haney to the backyard, and he just points at the yard, and he's just like, there's 2 bodies buried right there.
And right where they're going to put the pool.
Right where they're going to put the pool, which is just like, what?
Murphy's
right?
Law.
And right? And this guy, like, the homeowner, he's just like, he's never seen this guy before. He just looks like a typical run-of-the-mill just guy who just randomly showed up saying, by the way, there's 2 dead bodies buried in your backyard. So, like, you know, he leaves, and, like, they kind of go back and forth, like, do we do the pool, do we not? Like, are there really, like, bodies back there? Who wants to, like, live where there's bodies buried in the backyard? I mean, you guys. I mean, you got the guy in. So. Well, it's his ashes, but.
Still his body.
But, I mean, we're weird people. Yeah. And this was 1980s Texas, so let's just put it that way. So they decide the more practical thing is to rent a backhoe and tear up their yard. Because, again, like, they're going to put the pool there anyway. And this would just put their mind at ease knowing that there isn't anything back there. So they start digging. And it's not long before they come to some pine boxes. Get in the hole, lift it up, and it's pretty obvious that it's human remains. So, you know, jump out, do the right thing, call the county coroner, all of that. And they did confirm that there were 2 people buried in their backyard. All right, so they couldn't tell how long the bodies had been there, but they were so fragile that they like turned to powder, like to the touch. So they ended up with it's like 25 or 27 like fragments, and 2 wedding rings that was on one of the people that were buried, and they actually like handed it to the homeowner's wife, Judith. I'm gonna call her Janice, it's Judith. And Judith actually like went on record just saying that like the moment they handed her those rings, like she got this sinking, like sick feeling to her stomach, like she wanted to go vomit. Because to her, like, they just desecrated somebody's grave, and she just felt that was just so disrespectful, and like it really upset her. And it didn't actually say after that if they went forth with the pool. I don't think so, based on what happened next. So, because they were just so horrified by what they had done, I mean, albeit unintentional, they actually got permission to get the fragments back, and they reburied them in the backyard. And they actually like put up like, you know, proper markers and everything. And they apologized. Like they felt terrible about it, and they tried to just move on. But it just stirred everything up from a paranormal point of view. So there was one night that Sam, he was working the graveyard shift, no pun intended, and he like left to go to work, and Judith was getting ready to go to bed, and she heard the sliding glass door open, and so she's thinking, oh yeah, this guy like forgot something again. So he's just like, what do you need? And she's like, you know, what did you forget? And she actually heard him speak, so she, you know, literally thought it was her husband, but she goes out there, sliding glass door's locked, no one's there. Like, she heard footsteps coming into the house. So she's just like, that's weird, I'm going crazy. She, like, went to bed. And there was another instance where he got home from work, and obviously, like, his wife was in bed, and he would see, like, there was like a shadow in the kitchen kind of thing. And I guess it like chased it down the hallway. And that's all they really shared about that. But they started having like a lot of issues with like their electrical and just like classic haunting stuff. There were other families in the neighborhood that started reporting a lot of paranormal activity. So, I wrote it down. That they would see doors opening and closing on their own. Items would come up missing, which was really interesting. Shadows on the floors and walls, talking and whispering, especially like with plumbing and water running, which I think you've experienced that before.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, which is so weird. Houseplants would die, like couldn't keep them alive. People who were like their pride and joy was their gardens and such, like would die. Electronics would turn on and off on their own. Faucets would turn on and off on their own. Toilets would flush. A lot of people would report like a deep foreboding, just like not necessarily like fear, but just like something terrible is about to happen.
The feeling of the other shoe is gonna drop.
Yeah, and then like, you know, it's Texas, it's hot most of the time, but like in the dead of summer, cold spots, like Arctic cold spots kind of thing. And the Harveys, they didn't want to just take this at face value, so they actually investigated. Like, they went to a local guy who had been in the area for a very, very long time. His name was Jasper Norton, which I think is a pretty cool name. I like it. But anyways, so like with working with Jasper, they actually were able to find the name of the couple that was buried in their backyard. It was Betty and Charles Thomas. And the other shoe, that foreboding feeling, definitely dropped on them, because what they found out was that their house wasn't just built on burial ground. Their house was built on an entire cemetery. It was called the Black Hope Cemetery, and it was primarily former slaves that had built like a community in that area, and a lot of them were very, it was reported that a lot of them were very poor. So they didn't have headstones. They just would mark with whatever they had. And like, obviously this is the 80s. Betty and Charles, Charlie Thomas, they said they're born in the mid 1800s and they died within a few years of each other in the 1930s. So it was about 50-ish years that they were buried in there. Well, it was a cemetery, but it was their backyard. Obviously that they had a huge problem with this. One of the things that they actually ended up reporting was they were getting ready one morning to go for a walk, and I guess the wife, Judith, had a habit of like laying out her clothes the night before kind of thing, and she couldn't find her red shoes, and they were looking everywhere for them, and she couldn't find them, just thought she was going kind of crazy because she remembered like setting them out kind of thing. And they went on their walk and actually found the red shoes out on the new burial site for the Thomases. And what they realized after the fact was that day was actually Betty Thomas's birthday, or would have been her birthday. And so they thought that the husband was just trying to like get her a present from beyond the grave, which is pretty sweet, I think. Oh, that was kind of sweet. Now, Sam and Judith Haney, we'll come back to them. There's more to their story, but there was other people in the neighborhood that really had some pretty prolific things happen. Ben and Jean Williams, their family had one of the adjacent lots to the Haneys, and they started getting really bad stuff like not long after moving in kind of thing. They were the ones who would report a lot of like cold spots, the deep foreboding. At one point, their granddaughter was actually living with them, and they didn't say her exact age, but I get the feeling she was like 8 to 11 kind of things, like not a young child, but definitely not like a teenager yet. And she was definitely a target for like the voices, like hearing like the toilets would flush a lot around her, and she couldn't make out what they're saying, but she could hear the voices, kind of like Caden in the bedroom.
Oh, with the whispers.
With the whispers. So it was a lot of that kind of stuff, and would definitely like not just like walk into cold spots, but it was like a blast of cold air is what she described it as. Like she'd be walking down the hallway and it was just like wind would hit right into her kind of thing. They had reported, so Carly, the granddaughter, and Jean, the grandmother, it was like one afternoon they were home by themselves, like just like kind of laying down taking a nap kind of thing. Like Carly was reading a book and Jean was like trying to sleep, and they heard the front door just slam, and it wasn't time for the husband to be home, so like they thought that was kind of weird, but they heard like the boots coming down the hallway kind of thing, and it just had like this deep foreboding feeling that came with it, so it just didn't make any sense. And like Jean said that like her biggest fear was that there was a stranger in her house. Like they weren't thinking paranormal, they were thinking like someone broke into their house, which is terrifying. So like she got up off the bed and went into the hallway, and by this point, like hearing the boots coming down the hallway, she should have confronted someone, but there was nobody there but a blast of cold air. Yeah, creepy, right? And then so the husband's name was Ben Williams. He also worked the graveyard shift, and there was one night he came home from work, and his wife obviously was asleep, so it was about 6-ish a.m. kind of thing, and he's standing at the kitchen, and he just feels someone watching him, and so he closes the refrigerator door, and there's 2 shadows standing there. He said they were humanoid, couldn't make out a face or anything, but like 2 shadows just standing there looking at him. And the shadow started to like go down the hallway towards the bedroom where his wife was, and he sees them go into the room, so he's like hot pursuit, like right behind him, right? And he said without even thinking, he jumped right through the shadows onto the bed, because his thought was, it's going to harm my wife. And that ain't happening. He wasn't going to allow that to happen. And he said by the time he dove onto the bed, woke up the wife, obviously, and she's like, the heck are you doing? And he looks back, and there's nothing there. But he said the moment he jumped through those shadows, like, it wasn't just that he got, like, a cold spot. It was like, it was cold within his soul kind of thing. And it was dark, and he just, yeah, didn't like. 13 out of 10 would not review kind of thing. Obviously, like, they're noticing an uptick of, like, activity going on in the neighborhood. There were a lot of other stories of neighbors in the neighborhood. So Joe and Kim Clark would report Kim would be in the kitchen kind of thing, and she'd feel like shoulders, like something grabbing her shoulder, but no one was home kind of thing. And she would also see like a black orb always floating like above their TV. And just kind of like going back and forth. And like they also reported their TV turning on and off like a lot kind of thing. Oh, okay. So Kim also had reported a time. So her granddaughter was also over. I'm kind of getting like just from the research I did, this was like I know I said in the beginning, like an upper middle class, but like definitely a family neighborhood, but not like a lot of like grandparents and grandkids kind of thing. But she was in the restroom with her granddaughter, who did seem like a younger girl. And suddenly she felt someone standing behind her, breathing in her ear. And it was like a man breathing in her ear. And the very clear voice that they both heard saying, "Get out." So she said, "Yep." Got right out of the house, right? Called her husband, like she ran away. And okay, yeah, so Taylor was 3 years old. So she was a younger toddler. And she was always talking about a brown man that would come in. And she would always say like she didn't feel afraid, but he always tried to like pick her up, but she knew like stranger danger. So like she always like wouldn't do it. But she always, like, described him as, like, a brown man. Which, children.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was also a couple, so the wife's name was Veni Luna, which, obviously, like, I like that name. So she had a terrifying experience. So this was just a few weeks after she moved in, and I get the impression these guys were more of a younger couple. Didn't report of any children. But she came home from work one day, and her husband was just staring at the TV, wouldn't respond whatsoever. And she's just like, "Hey, I'm home," all that, like, wife stuff. Wouldn't respond, wouldn't give her any attention, and it took him a while before he came out of it. And she was just so like, she wasn't mad, it scared her, because it wasn't just like she was staring, like the dog was also just like staring at it kind of reminded me of that story you told about Christopher.
I was just thinking,
right?
It reminds me of Christopher.
So if you missed our last spooky session, we were talking about how Kristi's brother was playing an Xbox game. What was the game? It was a shooter game.
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty. Oh, duh. I knew that.
I think he's playing zombies.
Yeah.
Or something.
And it was just manically playing, and they thought, it was just pretty intense. Maybe you should, I didn't witness this, you probably should tell him.
He was playing calmly for a while, and then he got like really intense and like into it when the game froze. Mm-hmm. And he continued to pound the buttons and manically play it for a good 10 to 15 minutes after it froze. And we finally managed to snap him out of it somehow. I don't even remember how. And he swore he was playing the game, but that it had gone weird, like the music had changed. And there was a woman talking to him, and then I was actually talking to him about it the other day because we had
because we talked about it.
And he said that there was another woman's voice that came through too. I can't remember what she said, but he was pretty sure it was our grandma. Oh. And we think that that's what pulled him out, is that grandma showed up and was like, grandson, this is not kosher. But it was pretty scary. Like, it scared me. It scared my friends that were there. Scared my child that was there. Like.
Well, this didn't make any sense.
He wanted to reset the game and play again, I remember because like he wanted to try again, and I was like,
not tonight.
No, we're not doing that.
We're gonna shut that off. But that's what she came home to. It was just like blank stare at the screen, nothing, no acknowledgement. And she said that it took about 2 weeks before she like worked up the courage to actually be like, hey, what was that? By the way, what happened? And what he said was that he had gotten home about, I didn't exactly say, but I get the impression it's probably like 15, 20 minutes kind of thing. Got home before she did. And when he came home, like, you know, put everything down, grabbed his slippers, went to go be like, hey, my dog is being way too quiet. All you dog owners out there, you know what I mean. Your dogs like reach at the door, they're barking. This didn't happen, and it was very out of character for their dog. So he goes into the back corner and he notices that his dog is up on the ceiling.
Ooh.
Being held. And so like panic, right? Because like the rational thought of like, that shouldn't have happened, right? So he goes like grab his dog, and the slippers that were in his hand flew across the room. And it scared the shit out of him, as it would scare any of us, I think.
Yeah.
So he, you know, obviously like got his dog, and then the wife got home a few minutes later, and he just couldn't process what he had just experienced, kind of thing. And yeah, I don't know how I would react to that, man. That's just this
that'd be big on negatory. Like we have a lot of things that come through here, but it's usually always benign. I mean, we've had a few creepy things, but like not like that.
Yeah, that's terrifying. She also said that she took care of her grandmother, who was in the house with them, and she had Alzheimer's, which is rough. And the grandmother would always talk about the woman who would come into her room and try and talk to her. And so she would always, you know, tell the woman, hey, oh no, sorry, I'm getting the story wrong. The woman would always ask her, hey, where are you going? And she'd be like, I'd always tell her I'm going to the bathroom. Leave me alone. And she said the woman would leave her alone. But she said there would also be children who would come in too, and it would really upset her because she would try to take her afternoon naps, and there's these children staring at her kind of thing. So she'd always have to tell them to go away. And then the granddaughter, who was the wife with the husband with the dog, would always have to be like, Grandma, there's no children here. Which is why I had the impression that they didn't have any kids. But that's not terrifying. Okay, so neighborhood going a little crazy. I don't know like how vast the knowledge got out in the neighborhood about the Haney's research about you know, finding out that it was a cemetery that their houses were built on. But it's Ben and Jean Williams. They were the ones who had the granddaughter that was living at home with them, Carly, and then like the husband dove through the ghosts, found his wife. Okay, so it wasn't long after they moved in, they just got a real bad string of luck with their family. They had 6 people suddenly in their immediate family get cancer. 3 of them died, which is sad. And it could have just been a coincidence, but it was just like rare forms of cancer, not the same kind. I tried to do further research to get like more specifics on it, but I mean, obviously they're pretty private about it. They reported like when they first moved in, they were one of the ones that was having a real tough time keeping anything alive in the yard. Everything would just die, kind of thing. And there would be these holes, these square holes that would show up in their yard. And so they would fill them, and a few days later, they'd be back. So Ben and Jean Williams, they must have gotten with the Haneys at one point because they also spoke to that Jasper Norton guy. And the reason he's not just like a local, like, old-timer kind of thing, he actually buried a couple of these folks, like, back in the day. And the last person that was noted to have been buried in the cemetery was in 1939. Which is interesting. So, what they were able to find, just a little history on Black Hope itself. So, what it was in the 1800s, it was owned by the McKinley family. They owned this plantation outside of Texas, and then I want to say it was like the 1859, in the mid 1800s, like slavery got abolished, which rightly so. And the McKinley family, they actually, when they liberated their slaves, they gave them a plot of the land. Because I guess it was like a huge plantation, so they gave them like a plot of the land to actually like live on. So they built it up. Like they had like a church, they had schools. They just really built it into this really cool community, and they actually called it Black Hope, which I thought was so fitting. Such a good name.
Nice.
And with like, you know, like the schools, the church, they also built a cemetery. And that is what they built this housing development on, which is just, it's not cool, man. It's just not cool. Many of the descendants of these folks who created this community actually created Barrett Station, Texas. And quite a few of them are still there to this day, is what the research was saying, which is, yeah, pretty cool. And Ben and Jean Blames. So, they had a rough go. So they had the 6 family members who suddenly got like a rare form of cancer. 3 of them passed away. Their granddaughter and their daughter was living with them. And they would have, let's tell you about the holes. So they'd have these random like coffin-sized holes that would pop up in their yard. So they would fill them in, and within a few days it'd be sunk in again. And so they'd fill them up again and sink in. It was like an ever going thing, right? They found out that their home was built on the cemetery, and they didn't want to like desecrate or anything, but they didn't want it there anymore. Like they were some of the ones we were talking about, like the cold spots, the foreboding. They had a lot of activity in their home, and they had enough. They had enough of it. They were trying to work with the county on getting it moved, like moving the graves, like should have been done before their house was built, kind of thing. Or
I don't know, be respectful and don't build over top of a cemetery.
Exactly. But anyway, so they couldn't do anything about it, because in the state of Texas, it is illegal to knowingly dig up a dead body without the family's permission. And there was no markers, because these folks who were buried here, like again, like they didn't have a whole lot of money, so they would use like marking on a tree. So they found out that they couldn't move anything or knowingly dig it up without the family's permission, like law kind of thing. It wasn't a county law, it was a state law. I think I said county earlier, but it was a state law in Texas. And Jean one day she got fed up. No, it doesn't say like what happened to like get her to that point. But she had enough. So she got a shovel and she started digging.
Oh damn.
And she said she got like, I don't know, 15-ish minutes into it, and then suddenly felt so sick. Just like sudden like needed to vomit, was like hot and dizzy, and I mean it was Texas in the summer is what they described it as. So like she thought maybe she was just getting a little bit of heat stroke, and so she decided she's gonna go lay down, and her daughter decided that she would take over for her mom, right? So she starts doing it, and she was about 30 minutes in, and she started feeling the exact same way. Anyway, so the daughter, she gets real sick, like real sick. So they like get her in the house, try and like get her to get something to drink, and like realize that she's in trouble. So like the dad calls 911, they get her to the hospital, and they found out that she had a massive heart attack. She died 2 days later. She had just turned 30 years old.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Jean would later say that was a decision that she would regret for the rest of her life.
And that was the daughter?
That was Jean's daughter, yeah. So the Carly's grandma. Or
Carly's mother.
Carly's mom, Jean's daughter. Yes. And she passed away. Now a lot of what they kept saying is like people would ask them like, well, why don't you just move? Why don't you just move? Like, why did you stay? And it's because like they tied up all their money into buying this house. Like this was their dream house, but after that happened, they left. They said that they actually moved back home to Montana with family, and eventually they did come back to Texas, but a different part of Texas kind of thing. there was an Unsolved Mysteries episode that actually aired on this, like in the 90s, I want to say. And all of you just got that theme song in your head.
Love that show.
I know, me too. I loved it. Not so much like the Unsolved Murders or things like that. Just the paranormal
I'm
shit.
a total murderino, so...
Oh, when I was a kid, yes.
I've always been a total murderino.
Yeah.
Even as a kid.
No, say, as a kid, I was more into paranormal. Now I'm just like, true crime?
I mean, all of it.
Yeah.
Paranormal.
Yeah, all of it.
True crime.
Mm-hmm.
Even as a kid.
So it's actually fun to go back and watch. Fun fact, Matthew McConaughey actually starred in an episode.
Really?
Yes. Back before he was known to take, just like most struggling actors would take anything. So he actually starred as a dude who was saving children from a pedophile.
You get him, Matthew.
Get him, Matthew McConaughey. Good job. Good job. Yeah, so with the episode, and even like they actually, well, I'll get back to that in a second, but anyway, their family's doing better. Like as soon as they moved out, like their family members stopped dying of cancer. Carly, grew up because this was like, early 80s, like has a family of her own now, and like they're all doing really, really good, which is, that was good to hear. That was really, really good to hear. I was happy to see that in my research. The Haneys, told you we're going to come back to them. I feel so bad for these guys. So they decided that this was not okay. Like, they should never have had their house built on top of a cemetery. It was very disrespectful. It cost, they had a lot of mental anguish over this. Like, just a lot.
Oh, I can imagine.
I mean, especially with, like, the paranormal activity every single day. And just, like, it was a lot. It was a lot to deal with. So they sued the developers because they felt that that's something that should have been disclosed. And it was actually found. Yeah, you'd think. It was found in a court of law that it was found in their favor. They were awarded $142,000. And then it got overturned. And not only got overturned and they had to pay it all back, but then they had to pay the other side's attorney fees of over $50,000. They too didn't move when this was all going down because they sunk all their money into buying this house. And so not only did they end up having to file bankruptcy, but they lost the house.
Our judicial systems are a joke.
It's stupid. It's so stupid. I felt really bad for them because that should not have been a thing by any means. Now with this, obviously, like, we know about this, even though it's like, 2020 and this happened in the 80s. So it actually inspired a book. So this was written by the Williams family. And it was called The Black Hope Horror. There was a couple of other ones. There was a movie that was made. It was called Grave Secrets, The Legend of Hilltop Drive. I think it sounded like it was loosely based on things, and it was like a Lifetime movie. So y'all know what that means. Was
Great
not
acting.
a good one. A lot of the people talk about how, like, they'd watch that movie and it was just laughable. The current owner, who actually moved into the Haney's house, Tom...
Why would you do that?
It doesn't bother him. He says, yeah, the graves are still back there. Like...
My heads, no.
I, like, watched this interview where he was just like, yeah, like, it's just a thing. It's part of the house. He was disclosed it, though, so, like, he knew about it.
Okay, but what about the paranormal activity?
He says he's never experienced anything.
I wonder if they experienced it because it disrupted something.
I have to wonder, because like, with all of these stories, it kind of seemed like that was the catalyst. And it wasn't long after that the Williams went through what they went through. So, I don't know. That's probably one of those things, like, we'll never really know. But the current owner, Tom... I wrote that down. I can't remember handwriting. Anyways, he says that he doesn't, like, he knows it's there. He's respectful of it, but, like, he's never experienced any sort of paranormal activity, which, like, good for you. That's not mad at it. It was, okay, so it's The Black Hope Horror, The Story of a Haunting is the name of the book, and it was written from the Williams' point of view. And it's, it's just interesting this whole thing would have happened in the first place. I mean, I get that it was the 80s and like it was like 15,000 homes that was built in this whole development, but obviously it was like just this one area that was built over the cemetery kind of thing. And I know I said, like, kind of teased it in the beginning, saying that, like, hey, there was a movie that was made after this. And it wasn't just the really bad one I was telling you about. Some of you might have said, like, hey, this actually seems kind of familiar. You know, family moving in, building a pool in the backyard. This is how Poltergeist was based on a true story. Poltergeist is...
I can see it.
Yeah, is the one where they're talking about how it's built on the cemetery. And, like, even in the movie, they're just like... You just move the gravestones. Like, that's it. You just move the gravestones. Or the gravestone, sorry. And a lot of, like, what made it into the movie, like, the orbs bouncing around, and, like, you see, like, all of the ghosts coming through, a lot of them were of the known people that were buried in that cemetery, which I thought was really cool. I mean, not cool that it happened, obviously, but, like, cool that they're able to, like, give them that validation and show it. And it's really interesting, too. I went to get coffee. I meant to tell you this last week. I went to get coffee, and like they always have like a little trivia thing up, and it's like, which one of these is based on a true story? And they have like Halloween, Poltergeist was in there, Amityville Horror, which is obviously the one that they're trying to say is based on a true story. And I was like, actually, I don't know if you know this or not, but you have two based on true stories up there. And the funny part is that we were coming when we were originally going to film this last week. I was on my way to your house getting us coffee when that was up there. And I'm like, listen, I just did all the research about this. So that's the story of the Black Hope Cemetery and all of the hunting and everything that came from it. So, obviously, like, there's a lot of information out there about this, but it's, what I'd love is, like, if you guys have heard about this one before, like, drop it down into the comments down below. Personally, I remember the story from the old Unsolved Mysteries episode, back when I was a kid. And it's one that kind of always stuck with me, because it's just like, damn, that's like, there's no winners in that one.
Well, it's like, not the same, but similar, when they widened the roads on Lakeway, and they had to move all those graves in Lake Bay Cemetery. And I was like, that's rude. Let's not. Like,
I didn't realize that, but that explains why we have the landscape the way that it is. And I hate driving on that road.
When they widened it, there was a bunch of older graves along that area that they had to, like, move.
Yeah. I just think it's so disrespectful to do that. I mean, I know, like, we've talked about before how, like, we go and play in cemeteries, quote unquote, but it's just it's an amazing spot for like energy and.
But we don't go in there to disrupt things.
No, we're very respectful.
Things.
Then that's my point. Like, I don't in any sort of way like ever walk on their grave or anything like that. And like we talk. Well, it's weird to talk to them.
I have a thing about walking over graves. I will walk in between the headstones.
Never on them.
And never on them. It just.
It's not right.
Ooh, it creeps me out.
Yeah.
Like, and part of me just feels like it's rude.
Yeah, I agree. 100% agree.
Somebody walking on top of my forever bed.
Yeah. And this is something I always worry about, because it's like, you know, I've told you before, I want to be buried so that my body can be found like 2,000 years from now. And then I can be a mummy on display in the museum.
I was just talking with the girls the other night. Yeah. This is a total morbid subject, too. I'm like, girls, when I die, we're in the kitchen making dinner. I'm like, when I die, I don't want to be buried. I want to be cremated. I said, but this is where it gets fun. I want to be put into little bottles, and I want to be taken all over the fucking world and left in various places.
Oh, look at you, Cash.
Mommy, they don't have to. Like, she's like, Mom, like, how though? Like, we just like set the bottle down and walk away. I'm like, yeah, you can get a pup and be like, oh, this looks like a great place for Mom to hang out. Well, hey, you might be put her on your shelf. No, I want to be like dumped over the cliffs in New Zealand and like I want them spread all over the world.
I promise to do this. Since children think that it's weird. I think it's awesome.
Oh, no, I think it's awesome. Trudy's like, wait, how are we going to explain that on the plane? And they're like, what are all these little vials? It's my
Drugs.
mom.
It's drugs.
It's my mom.
That'll get you through Homeland Security.
Tell them they don't have to keep any of me if they don't want to. You just take me various places.
I love it. I just, with my anatomy and like all of the fusions and the way my spine's all screwed up,
And then
put me on display.
And then I asked which one of them was going to take me to the suicide forest in Japan. And Drew's like, I'm going to stand. She's like, I will, but I'm going to stand on the walkway. I'm just going to heave you in. And I said, no. You just dump me right on the walkway. I don't want to be out there. I just want to be there.
I want to be in it.
Right? I want to be like, oh, man. Now I'm here forever.
Oh, that'd be terrible.
I want to go there, though. It's one of those.
Yeah, it's bucket list.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Nice. All right, y'all. So that's what we have for you here this week with our spooky session. Drop us a comment down below. Is this one that you've ever heard of before?
I haven't ever heard of it. Which is weird because Poltergeist is one of my favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
Movie series is.
Yeah.
Third one scared the shit out of me as a kid, though.
Well, and that's just it. Like the movie Poltergeist itself, so cursed. We can do a whole topic on this.
Yes,
a whole topic on this between like Poltergeist and Exorcist and just like haunted movies tend to have like really the only
Twilight Zone was really haunted too.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna have to make this another topic.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that was it. That was train coming back on. Okay, cool. So leave us a comment down below if there is another spooky topic you'd like for us to cover. This is something that we're going to be doing moving forward, where we have a cool tarot reading for you in the beginning of the week and a spooky session at the end of the week.
Not always spooky though. I think we'll do gab sessions.
Yeah,
I think
we talked about that before. Like we have a couple different topics.
We have some not quite so silly or not quite so paranormally or
right.
scary.
And I can't promise we're not always going to dress up.
We may or may not.
Our Shield Maiden look, I love this.
It's my heritage.
Finding mine too. Little though, not a lot. Little. Alright y'all, help us appease the YouTube gods. Like, share, subscribe. Do all the YouTube things. Let us, let YouTube see that this is something you still want us to do. Let us know if this is something you still want us to do. If you're like, we hate this. I want to do more of this. This is fun. Alright, y'all. Hopefully this was fun for you, and we'll definitely see you next time.